All right, so we have a special guest on the line with us. Of course, you know him, best-selling New York Times author, former MSNBC host, and Bloomberg reporter, award-winning reporter. It's Dylan Radigan with us. Hi, Dylan. How are you?
Hey, good. How's it going out there? How's the quarantine?
Good, good. How was your quarantine going?
Going well.
Okay.
It's pretty solid.
All right. Pretty solid.
Pretty solid. Not touching anybody. Not touching anything. No one. I'm in a building alone. No one can come or go.
Okay.
No, I'm just tracking the data, watching the show. It's it's quite a thing.
Okay. So let's get to the big story. So I wanted to talk about this. There's the headline from PBS: Federal Reserve to lend additional $1 trillion a day to large banks. And here's what they say. The New York Federal Reserve said it will offer $1 trillion of overnight loans a day through the end of this month to large banks. That is an addition to $1 trillion in 14-day loans it is offering every week. Banks so far have not borrowed nearly as much as the New York Fed is offering, and the loans are quickly repaid. None of the funding is from taxpayer dollars. Wall Street analysts say, now, Dylan, where does the money come from?
So the money is invented by diluting the U.S. dollar. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. That's exactly what I thought was happening.
Keep going, and then I can put this in a bigger context. I'll let you finish.
Okay, all right. Wall Street's analysts say the huge number is intended to calm markets by demonstrating that the Fed's ability to lend short term is nearly unlimited. Okay, so that's supposed to make everybody calm. The Fed is also buying treasury bonds at a furious pace and will soon run through the $500 billion in purchases it announced on Sunday. It is also accelerating its purchases of mortgage-backed securities. Most analysts expect they will buy more. The Fed has just worked with unprecedented speed, said Stephen Friedman, a former economist at the New York Fed and senior macroeconomist at McKay Shields. He's an asset manager. He says, I think there will be no hesitation on their part about buying as many treasuries and mortgage-backed securities as necessary. The Fed in the past has come under criticism from Democrats in Congress for not using its emergency lending powers to assist struggling local governments. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi asked Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell on Tuesday to consider doing so. The Fed said its action Friday was in response to turmoil in financial markets. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's break it down for me, Dylan. So that money gets invented at the Fed. And tell me what happens from there.
Well, can I just back up one level? Can I take you to a little higher altitude?
Yes.
First?
Yes.
So in summary, what you just described is the biggest bank in the world, which is the Central Bank of the United States, just backstopping the existing banking system. Forget all the details, okay?
So there's a bank run.
The question is why did they do that, and how does and all those. So let me just answer that real quickly, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty. Okay.
Okay.
We already have 3 crises underway potentially. You have for sure you have a biological crisis, 100% chance of that. That's underway. Then you have an economic crisis with the stop down, which is underway as well. And then you have risk of a social crisis with all the quarantining and isolation and the economic and biological crisis as a provocation for more social intensity, which can have some negative expressions, right?
Mm-hmm.
What they don't want to do is have a 4th crisis, which is a financial crisis. This is not 2008. This is not 2009. The banks are relatively healthy, absent the economic crisis and everything that's happening. And so what you're seeing is a decision to ensure that a 4th crisis, which is a credit crunch and a financial crisis, doesn't happen, which then brings up the question, let me just back up from your trillions. So the Fed's $4 trillion up to basically make sure that the banks have as much money as they need to do whatever they want. That's the simplest way to describe it. We can go through the iodine of how this whole thing works, but I don't know that that's the most. I mean, I'll do whatever you want.
No,
so you have $4 trillion in space backstopping the banks, and then you have another $6 trillion that they want to give away directly, and then another $4 trillion that they want to put up as loan guarantees, which puts the U.S. government between the central bank and the Treasury at $14 trillion posted as an offering as of today, which is beyond global precedent in a way that is incomprehensible.
Yeah, it is incomprehensible to me.
People, I mean, people, you know, that you see the little YouTube videos, they're like, oh, this is $1 million, and then this is $1 billion, and
Yeah.
it's this huge pile of rice or whatever. $1 trillion is that much bigger than $1 billion, as $1 billion is bigger than $1 million.
Right. Correct. So if
we did 14 of those today offered. So now I'll finish my thesis very quickly, and then we can I'll take anything you got. The political debate immediately is for a political restructuring. I'm like, you know, we need to obviously Medicare for all and UBI, like stabilize the system, right? That's my personal advocacy, for instance, right? Or you have what you think, or everybody has their agenda that comes out in a crisis because there's motion and there's a sense of opportunity to adjust budgets and all these things, right? Structural shifts and all this. But what ends up happening, what happened in 2008 and 2009, and I was more offended emotionally by it at the time, quite famously so with the rant and all this,
right,
is they just solved the problem by working inside the existing system, which works in the interest of that system's preservation, and they avoid all restructuring. And then they just allow it to be a fairly corrupt boondoggle on the push through with winners and losers and payoffs and hookups on deals. And so it's a disgusting, but that's the American system. And so they have two choices, which is just keep running the morphine through the existing system, which is your $4 trillion on the back end, $6 trillion up front, $4 trillion on the side. That is your economic morphine to at least create psychological stability, because the markets are so limit down every day on just the absolute lack of any sense of anything in terms of a foundation for anything. So at the very least, they're just basically what the U.S. government is saying is we have an infinite supply of money, basically.
Oh, okay.
And then it brings up, well, why the way they're doing this is corrupt. The way they're doing this is for the wrong people. Yes, that's correct. They're doing it inside of the existing. They're avoiding all that you seek, Jimmy, or that I seek, or honestly probably 80% of the country seeks, even if it's conflicting agendas, which is some shift in either the distribution of power or the allocation of budgets and the universality of benefits and all of these things, is exactly what they don't want to do.
So, okay. So let me. So when they print $14 trillion like that, or that print, or just kind of invent and give it to the banks, that has to.
Well, no, it's $4 trillion for the banks.
Okay.
$6 trillion for the businesses, and $4 trillion in loan guarantees.
Okay.
$4 trillion for the banks.
Okay. So that causes inflation, right? And then my money is worth
no,
less.
it doesn't. It doesn't cause inflation, because this is good. We're going to get into the weeds on this.
Okay.
But inflation is a function not just of the supply of cash, but it's a function of the supply of cash multiplied by the velocity at which it moves.
Okay.
So adding a lot of cash to a market without velocity is not inflationary. And in this case, all the cash is actually doing is it's allowing so the banks are going to have some number of defaults in their mortgage portfolios and their small and medium enterprise lending businesses, and all the loans that the banks make, whether it's for people to buy houses or to operate businesses or whatever it is, they're going to have some unexpected number of defaults that will either force them to stop lending to readjust their ratios and create a fourth crisis, which is a financial crisis, or they can take that defaulted paper and sell it to the U.S. taxpayer at 100 cents on the dollar, and then they just invent the dollar on the computer at the Federal Reserve using the currency and just diluting the currency, but the currency, because it's the reserve currency, doesn't reflect dilution. So
when they say they're going to be buying back mortgage-backed securities, that's what you just described right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in other words, you bought whoever buys a house or a business or whatever, they can't pay the mortgage. The mathematics on the mortgage bond for the bank were that 95% of the people were going to pay. And now it's that only 85 or 65% of the people can pay because of the coronavirus.
Right.
Top down. So then the bank can't function if that loan is, instead of being worth 80, 90 or 95 cents, is now worth 50 or 60 cents. That bank is out of business. And now all of a sudden the ability to offer credit or lending for anybody goes away. And so what they do is they let the banks take these loans that are going to have a higher default rate than they would than they were supposed to have because of the crisis and trade them in for even money.
Okay, so they're buying the toxic.
That's what. So when they say the Fed opened the window and $4 trillion to buy mortgage-backed securities or to buy treasury bonds or to buy any collateralized asset, they'll buy your boat, whatever, whatever it is. What's really happening is you're taking something that on paper, let's say, is worth 100 cents, that the statistics on it were that it was going to pay some number between 95 cents and $1.05, and all of a sudden it only pays 55 cents because the default rate exploded, and then they can take that coupon and get the 100 cents for it.
From the government.
From the government, and then the government absorbs the default risk into the currency.
Got it.
In exchange for keeping the banks liquid and flowing in the system so they don't create the fourth crisis.
And this is this similar to what they did in the 2008-9?
Identical.
Yes. So they bought the toxic.
They know how to do this. We've done this before. They know how to run the iodine.
And
so it's actually less anxious this time because they know just to open this window and start trading collateral at 100 cents to keep all the banks from creating a financial crisis. The big difference, again, last time there was leverage and there was all the ninja loans and all that credit stuff that happened in 2006, 7, 8, 9. That's not what this is. This is a biological crisis and a global economic stop down. And what you don't want to have happen is an additional fourth crisis because each crisis exponentially inflames the consequences of the other crisis. Right? Because the worse the economy gets, the more people want to go outside. The more people want to go outside, the worse the biological crisis gets. The worse the biological crisis gets, the less people can go outside. The less people can go outside, the more the banks don't get paid. The more the banks don't get paid, the more the banks don't have money. It's a vicious circle.
Right.
And so what they're trying to do with this, what they have done, is they basically said, we're not restructuring anything in the banking system. We're just going to backstop the defaults for all the banks. So if they come up short, they can come to us and we'll pay them 100 cents on the dollar or some number that makes them whole.
Is there something else that you think they should be doing besides what they're doing?
I mean, listen, I absolutely yes. I mean, but I have what I've been advocating for, going on more than 10 years is a macroeconomic restructuring that could be, ironically, could be most easily implemented in a moment like this because everything's on the table. But at the same time, because of the acute nature of the issue, because hours actually matter, it's much more rational to keep the boat that you've got going as it is right now within the sort of mechanics of how it's set up, however dastardly and corrupt that may be, than it is to get into an argument about the design of the boat at this moment. That's where they get you.
Right.
So, like, if I was in the room and they're like, Radigan, would you do this or would you not do this? In terms of if I was a policymaker, if despite all of my beliefs under this situation, in this acute crisis, for sure you've got to post that money. You don't really have a choice. It's a hostage situation.
Right. And so just to recap, you think that what they're doing with the banks is going to work, or it's what they have to do?
It does work. I mean, it's not about that I think or don't think. Mathematically, it does work.
Okay.
You can object to it morally, policy, and with great venom and foam, and be well justified in your distress. But that doesn't mean it doesn't work.
So now,
the money move.
Even though it's not technically taxpayer money that they're giving, you know that people are going to hear $14 trillion invented at the snap of a finger. And we're still told we can't have things, No,
it's going to create quite the. It's going to create some consternation.
So now, last time this happened, there had to be a vote in Congress to inject this kind of liquidity into Wall Street. Right now, they got rid of that vote. Remember that? Wasn't that in the?
No, I told you. I explained this. Do you remember? I've told you about this.
Yes.
This is what they solved for last time.
Yeah. So last time, let me just tell everybody. Last time, if you remember, they had to have a vote on whether to give this money to Wall Street, and the first time it failed. And then
not only that, but they also had to have a vote. Not even a vote. They had to make a change to change the banks Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, from investment banks to bank holding companies, to recertify and relicense them so that they would have direct access to the Federal Reserve. They had to actually do some restructuring with the banking system last time to get all the banks with direct wiring to the Federal Reserve, and then do the additional legislation in Dodd-Frank pushed for by Rahm Emanuel to avoid ever having to have a vote like this ever again.
So that's why this kind of liquidity, as they say, these trillions of dollars can be pumped into the market at the snap of a finger, because it was written into legislation after the last crash that they never have to go to Congress and ask for this money again, because it would be a heavy lift and it would cause too much. It would be too conspicuous, and
everybody loses. Politically, everybody's a loser.
Right, and so this way, if it just happens, it lessens the optics. The optics are better.
The political burden on everybody is reduced, so it's a nice thing that Rahm did for everybody.
Okay, so you think it is a good thing?
No, I'm being sarcastic that
okay.
Rahm Emanuel was hooking them up.
I was like, wait a minute. Okay. Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?